Welcome back, beautiful soul. I'm so glad you found your way here tonight. Get comfortable, close your eyes if you haven't already, and let me be your guide into the most restful sleep. But first, if this is your first time here, hit subscribe so we can meet again tomorrow night. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're resting tonight and what kind of dreams you'd like me to weave for you next. Your sleep journey starts now. The GPS said I'd arrived, but there was no house at 487 Berkshire Lane, just empty woods and a dirt path disappearing into darkness. I checked the order timestamp, 9:47 p.m., March 3rd, 2016. Customer name, Michael Brennan. Phone number disconnected when I called. I should have left, but I needed this job. Single mom, 2 kids, rent due in 4 days. I followed that path for maybe 200 yards before I saw the cabin. No lights, no car. Just a structure that looked abandoned for decades, windows covered with plywood, porch sagging like a broken spine. But someone had ordered 2 large pepperonis with extra cheese 37 minutes ago and prepaid $43.50 with a credit card that went through without issue. I'm Rebecca Ortiz. I drove for Giovanni's Pizza in Millbrook County for 3 years. What I'm about to tell you got me fired, blacklisted from every delivery service in the region, and left me with PTSD that makes it impossible to work nights anymore. The police called me unreliable. The district attorney refused to pursue charges, and Michael Brennan, if that was even his real name, was never found. I knocked on that cabin door at 10:04 p.m. I remember checking my phone, thinking about the 7 other deliveries waiting back at the shop, calculating my lost tips. The door opened immediately, like he'd been standing right there waiting, but I couldn't see him clearly. The interior was completely dark except for a single candle burning somewhere deep inside, and he stood in the shadows wearing what looked like a dark hoodie. "Pizza delivery," I said, holding up the insulated bag. My voice sounded too loud in the silence of those woods. He didn't speak, just reached out with a hand that seemed too pale, too thin, and dropped a crumpled $50 bill into my palm. His fingers were ice cold when they brushed my skin. Then he grabbed the pizzas and slammed the door so hard the entire cabin shook. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, confused by the whole interaction, before I heard the scream. A woman's scream, high-pitched and terrified, coming from inside that cabin. Then a crash, like furniture being overturned. Then another scream, the word help clear and desperate. I should have run. Any rational person would have run. But I called 911 first, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. The dispatcher, Karen Yates, according to the records I obtained later, told me units were en route and to get back to my vehicle immediately. Estimated arrival time, 12 minutes. I was already running down that path when I heard the third scream, then sudden, absolute silence. I made it to my car and locked the doors, engine running, hands gripping the steering wheel hard enough to hurt. I gave the dispatcher every detail I could remember, the address, the cabin's description, the screams, the strange customer. She kept telling me to stay calm, that officers were coming. But when I checked my rearview mirror, I saw a figure emerge from the path. The man from the cabin. He was walking toward my car with slow, deliberate steps. I floored it, tires spitting gravel, fishtailing onto Berkshire Lane. In my mirror, he just stood there watching me leave, illuminated by my taillights, completely motionless. I drove straight to Giovanni's, ran inside past the other drivers, and told my manager, Tony DeLuca, everything. He called the police again while I sat in the break room hyperventilating. 2 sheriff's deputies arrived at 11:08 p.m. Deputy Charles Hartman and Deputy Nicole Vasquez. I'll never forget their names because of what they did to me. I repeated my story, showed them the $50 bill, gave them the exact location. Deputy Hartman kept exchanging looks with Deputy Vasquez, expressions I couldn't read. They asked if I'd been drinking, if I used drugs, if I had any history of mental illness. They followed me back to Berkshire Lane in their patrol car. I led them down that dirt path with my headlights and their spotlight illuminating the way. When we reached the spot where the cabin should have been, there was nothing, just trees and underbrush. No cabin, no structure of any kind, no sign anything had ever been there. "This is where it was," I kept saying. "Right here. I swear to God there was a cabin right here." Deputy Hartman examined the ground with his flashlight. "Ma'am, there's no evidence of any structure, no foundation, no debris, no tire tracks except yours and ours." But I could see the depression in the ground where the porch had been, the disturbed soil where I'd walked. Deputy Vasquez took photos, but she was documenting my instability, not evidence of a crime. They had me perform a field sobriety test right there in the woods at 11:34 p.m. I passed, but it didn't matter. The credit card used to place the order belonged to a woman named Patricia Holbrook, who'd been dead for 8 months. Her card had been cancelled in July 2015, yet it processed payment on March 3, 2016 at 9:11 p.m. Giovanni's provided the transaction records, but the police said it was a system glitch. The phone number that placed the order was registered to a disconnected landline that hadn't been active since 1997. I hired a private investigator with money I couldn't afford to spend. James Rutherford, a retired detective who'd worked homicide for 23 years. He found records of a cabin at that location that had burned down in 1982, a murder-suicide. A man named David Kramer killed his wife Eleanor, then set the cabin on fire with both of them inside. The property was never redeveloped, deemed unsuitable for construction due to soil contamination from the fire. Rutherford also found something else. 4 other delivery drivers had reported similar experiences in Millbrook County between 2003 and 2016. Different locations, different scenarios, but always the same pattern. GPS directing them to abandoned areas, orders placed with impossible payment methods, structures that disappeared, women's screams, and police responses that went nowhere. None of the drivers were believed. 2 were fired. 1 left the state. 1 stopped talking about it entirely after what he described as harassment from local authorities. I tried to contact them. Only one, Sandra Martinez, agreed to speak with me. She delivered for China Palace in 2009 and experienced almost the identical situation I had, right down to the prepaid order and the vanishing building. She told me she'd seen 3 girls in that house, teenagers, bound and gagged in a back room when the door opened. She reported it. Police found nothing. She was fired for making false reports that damaged the restaurant's reputation, then charged with filing a false police report herself. The charge was eventually dropped, but her life was destroyed. My manager fired me on March 8, 2016, 5 days after the incident. He said I was creating a hostile work environment by continuing to discuss what happened. When I applied to other delivery services, I was rejected from all of them. Somehow, word had spread that I was unreliable, possibly mentally unstable, a liability. I still drive past Berkshire Lane sometimes, though it terrifies me. The path is still there. And twice, late at night, I've seen light in those woods, flickering like candlelight, exactly where that cabin stood. I've never stopped long enough to investigate again. I don't have the courage. Someone is using these delivery services to lure people, probably women, to isolated locations. Someone with enough technical knowledge to process payments through dead people's accounts and enough connections to make police reports disappear. And whatever happened to that woman whose screams I heard, whatever Michael Brennan or David Kramer or whoever he really is did to her, he got away with it completely. If you delivered food in Millbrook County between 2003 and 2016 and experienced anything similar, please come forward. The police won't listen to me. Maybe they'll listen if there are enough of us. The blood on the doorknob was still warm when I touched it at 10:23 p.m. on July 18, 2019. I didn't realize what it was at first, just thought the metal felt sticky. maybe from humidity or cooking grease. Then I saw my fingertips under the porch light and knew immediately something was catastrophically wrong. Vincent Choi had been ordering from Napoli's every Thursday night for 11 months. Always the same: large Hawaiian, extra pineapple, light on sauce. Always tipped exactly 15%, never more or less. Always came to the door wearing the same red Cardinals hoodie and khaki pants. Always said, "Thanks, buddy," in the exact same tone and closed the door before I could respond. I'm Aaron Kowalski, and I delivered to 2847 Ferndale Court 47 times before the night everything changed. That Thursday felt normal initially. I took Vincent's order at 9:51 p.m., made the delivery at 10:21 p.m. like clockwork. But when I pulled into his driveway, his front door was already open. Not wide open, just cracked about 4 inches, with light spilling out onto the concrete. That had never happened before. Vincent was a creature of absolute habit. I grabbed his pizza and walked to the door, calling out his name. No response. I knocked on the door frame, and that's when my hand touched the blood. Fresh, red, still liquid. And when I pushed the door open wider with my elbow, I saw the trail of blood droplets leading from the entrance down the hallway toward the back of the house. Every instinct screamed to run, but I couldn't move. I stood frozen, staring at that trail, watching the droplets glisten under the overhead lights. Then I heard the voice, weak and gurgling, coming from somewhere deep in the house. "Help, please." I called 911 at 10:24 p.m. Operator Jennifer Wade answered, and I told her there was blood everywhere and someone was hurt at 2847 Ferndale Court. She told me to exit the premises immediately and wait for emergency services. But that voice called out again, weaker this time, and I made the stupidest decision of my life. I followed the blood trail. The hallway led to the kitchen. More blood here, smeared on the walls like someone had tried to steady themselves while walking. A knife block on the counter with one slot empty. And then I saw him through the sliding glass door that led to the backyard. Vincent Choi, lying face down on the patio, his red hoodie soaked darker with blood, a knife protruding from his upper back. I ran outside and knelt beside him. He was still breathing, shallow and ragged. His eyes were open but unfocused. Blood pooled beneath him, so much blood I could smell the copper tang of it. I told him help was coming, told him to stay with me, but he was already fading. She's still," he whispered, then coughed up blood. "Inside." That's when I heard the footsteps behind me. I turned and saw her standing in the kitchen doorway, a woman in her 30s, blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing blue jeans and a gray tank top. Completely calm, not a drop of blood on her. She was holding Vincent's phone, scrolling through it like she was checking messages. "You must be the pizza guy," she said. Her voice was steady, almost friendly. "He told me you were very punctual." I stood up slowly, my legs shaking. "Who are you?" "I'm his wife, Amanda Choi. We've been separated for 14 months, but Vincent never changed the locks. Isn't that interesting?" The way she said it made my skin crawl. No emotion, no distress, like she was discussing the weather. "You need to put the phone down and step away," I said, though I had no authority, no weapon, nothing but terror pumping through my system. She smiled. "The thing about Vincent is he thought he could just leave. Start a new life, order pizza every Thursday, pretend I didn't exist. But you can't erase 17 years of marriage. You can't erase me." Sirens were getting closer, maybe 2 minutes away. Vincent had stopped breathing. I could see his chest was no longer moving. Amanda looked down at him without any expression I could identify. "You should go," she said. "You're just the delivery guy. This has nothing to do with you." I backed away slowly, keeping her in my line of sight until I reached the gate at the side of the house. Then I ran to the front yard just as the first patrol car pulled up. Officers Benjamin Ross and Taylor Newman exited with weapons drawn. I told them everything in a frantic rush. The blood, Vincent in the backyard, the woman inside who said she was his wife. But when they entered the house with me following behind the paramedics, Amanda was gone. The sliding glass door at the back was open. The blood trail was there. Vincent's body was there, but Amanda Choi had vanished into the darkness. Officers found her car parked 3 blocks away on Morrison Street at 11:47 p.m., abandoned with the keys still in the ignition. She hasn't been seen since. The investigation revealed that Amanda had been stalking Vincent for over a year. She'd broken into his house at least 6 times, moving things, going through his belongings, watching him sleep. He'd filed for a protective order on February 12, 2019, which was approved, but apparently never enforced. Judge Margaret Sullivan signed it. Detective Luis Cordova handled the domestic violence complaint, but Vincent had called the police 4 times reporting violations, and each time officers responded, Amanda was gone by the time they arrived. Detective Cordova told me privately, weeks later when the adrenaline had worn off and the nightmares had started, that they'd had plenty of evidence to arrest her. Fingerprints in Vincent's house from dates when she shouldn't have been there. Video footage from a neighbor's security camera showing her car in the street. But there were always delays. Paperwork lost, warrants not processed, court dates postponed. Amanda's father, Robert Fletcher, was a retired police captain with connections throughout the department. Whether those connections influenced the case is something I can't prove, but absolutely believe. Vincent died before the ambulance reached St. Mary's Hospital. Time of death, 10:47 p.m. The coroner, Dr. Helen Schwartz, determined he'd been stabbed 4 times in the back and once in the neck. Defensive wounds on his hands indicated he'd fought back. The attack had occurred approximately 15 minutes before I arrived, which meant Amanda had been in that house, in his kitchen, watching him bleed out in the backyard, while calmly waiting for his pizza to be delivered. The police classified her as a fugitive. They issued an arrest warrant for first-degree murder on July 19, 2019. The FBI added her to their databases. Her photo was circulated to airports, bus stations, border crossings, and she disappeared like smoke. No credit card activity, no phone pings, no sightings. It's like she ceased to exist the moment she walked out that sliding glass door. I was interviewed 17 times by police, twice by FBI agents. They treated me with suspicion initially, questioning why I'd entered the house, why I'd followed the blood trail, whether I'd had any relationship with Vincent beyond pizza delivery. It was Detective Sarah Kingston who finally cleared me completely, confirming my 911 call timeline matched the evidence and my fingerprints were only where I said I'd been. Napoles kept me on, but I requested to be removed from that delivery zone. I couldn't drive past Ferndale Court anymore. Couldn't see that house where Vincent Choi spent the last year of his life thinking he was safe. The new owner who bought it in December 2019 has no idea what happened on that patio. The listing didn't disclose it. The real estate agent, Karen Whitmore, said Illinois law only requires disclosure if specifically asked. I still deliver pizzas. Different area now, different routines. But every time I see a door standing open when it shouldn't be, every time I feel something sticky on a doorknob, I'm back in that hallway following a trail of blood. And I think about Amanda Choi, somewhere out there living under a new name, maybe watching someone else, planning something else, while the system that failed Vincent moves on to fail the next victim. If you're in a situation like Vincent was, if someone is violating a protective order and the police aren't acting fast enough, document everything. Record every incident. Tell everyone you know. Because the legal system moves slowly and dangerous people move fast, and sometimes 14 months of warnings aren't enough to save your life. The apartment should have been empty. The lease had terminated on September 30th, 2017, and I had the property management company's email confirming it. Yet someone kept ordering delivery to Unit 2408 at the Riverside Towers, and someone kept leaving cash in an envelope taped to the door. Same order every Monday and Friday. 1 large meat lovers, 1 2-liter Sprite, breadsticks. Same handwritten note. Leave food, take money, thank you. I'm Tasha Wilcox, and I worked for Marco's Pizza for 6 years before I witnessed what happened in that apartment and lost my job for refusing to stay silent. The orders to Unit 2408 started appearing in our system on October the 6th, 2017, exactly 6 days after the lease ended. They came through our online portal, always placed between 6 and 6:15 p.m., always using the same email address, resident2408gmailservice.com. Payment method, cash on delivery, though the cash was always there before I arrived. The first time I delivered there, October 6th at 7:43 p.m., I knocked on the door and got no answer. I was about to call the customer when I noticed the envelope taped at eye level. Inside was $38, exact change including a $3 tip. I left the food on the floor and took the money, assuming it was just someone who worked nights or didn't like social interaction. Lots of customers were like that. By the 10th delivery on October 30th, I was curious. I'd never seen anyone come or go from that apartment. Never heard sounds inside when I knocked. The cash envelope was always there. Always exact change, always the same polite note in neat handwriting. I asked the building's concierge, Thomas Erickson, about the tenant in 2408. He checked his records and told me the unit was vacant, had been since the previous tenant moved out on September 28th. When I insisted someone was ordering food there, he looked at me like I was confused and said the management company would know if someone had moved in. I called Riverside Property Management and spoke with Denise Harper. She confirmed Unit 2408 was empty and scheduled to be shown to potential tenants starting November 15th. No one had accessed the unit since the final walkthrough on October 3rd, which she had personally conducted. The previous tenant, Gregory Nolan, had moved to Seattle for a job transfer. When I mentioned the ongoing food deliveries, she became concerned and said she'd send maintenance to check the unit. The next delivery was November 3rd, 2017, at 7:38 p.m. The envelope was there as usual, but this time the apartment door was slightly ajar. Not wide open, just enough that I could see the lights were on inside. I called out, "Pizza delivery!" No response. I should have left the food and gone, but something felt profoundly wrong. The air smelled stale, like the ventilation hadn't been running. I pushed the door open and stepped into the entrance. The apartment was furnished, which made no sense if it was vacant. A couch, coffee table, television playing with the sound off. And sitting at the dining table with his back to me was a man. He didn't turn around when I entered. Just sat there motionless, facing the window that looked out over the river. "Sir," I said, "I have your pizza." He didn't move, didn't respond. I walked closer, my footsteps sounding too loud on the hardwood floor. When I came around the table to see his face, I dropped the pizza bag. It was Gregory Nolan. I knew because his photo was on the lease documents visible on the coffee table and because his employee ID from Carlson Engineering was sitting on the counter. But Gregory Nolan had moved to Seattle 5 weeks ago. Except here he was, sitting at this table in clothes that looked like he'd been wearing them for days, staring out the window without blinking. "Mr. Nolan?" I touched his shoulder, and he finally turned his head. His eyes were unfocused, pupils dilated. He looked at me without recognition, without any expression at all. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" I pulled out my phone to call 911, but he grabbed my wrist with shocking strength. His hand was ice cold. "Don't," he said. His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. "They're listening, always listening." "Who's listening? What's wrong?" He released my wrist and turned back to the window. "Can't leave." "Tried. They bring me back. Every time. 23 days now. Can't leave." I called 911 at 7:51 p.m. Operator Marcus Johnson answered, and I explained I'd found a man in an apartment that was supposed to be vacant, and he seemed to be in medical distress. Ambulance and police were dispatched. I stayed with Gregory, trying to get more information, but he'd stopped talking, just stared out that window like he was waiting for something. Paramedics arrived at 8:04 p.m. EMTs Rachel Park and Christopher Dean examined Gregory and determined he was severely dehydrated and malnourished. They said he needed immediate hospitalization, but when they tried to move him from the chair, he became violent, screaming that he couldn't leave, that they'd punish him if he left. It took 3 police officers to restrain him: Officer Diana Moss, Officer Kyle Brennan, Officer Jeffrey Zhang. They transported him to County General Hospital at 8:29 p.m. I gave my statement to Detective Andrew Paulson, explaining about the ongoing deliveries, the cash envelopes, finding Gregory in what was supposed to be an empty apartment. He said they'd investigate, but seemed more concerned with whether I'd entered legally, whether I'd touched anything, whether my story was consistent. The next day, I contacted Carlson Engineering. The HR director, Patricia Lombardi, told me Gregory Nolan had never relocated to Seattle. He'd quit his job via email on September 29, 2017, citing personal reasons. No forwarding address, no exit interview. They'd mailed his final paycheck to the Riverside Towers address, and it had never been cashed. Denise Harper from Property Management claimed she'd conducted a walkthrough, and the apartment was completely empty on October 3rd. But I'd seen furniture. I'd seen dishes in the sink. I'd seen mail piled up. Detective Paulson said there was no evidence of furniture when officers responded. The apartment was vacant except for trash and the pizza I'd dropped. He suggested I'd been confused, maybe delivered to the wrong unit. Except I had photos. I'd taken 3 photos on my phone at 7:49 p.m. while waiting for emergency services, before the police told me to stop. The furniture was there. Gregory was there. The photos proved it. But Detective Paulson said the metadata could be manipulated, and besides, if furniture had been there, where did it go? How did someone remove an entire apartment's worth of furniture in the 13 minutes between when I called 911 and when police arrived? Gregory Nolan was held in psychiatric evaluation for 72 hours, then released on November 6th. The hospital psychiatrist, Dr. Nathan Yu, determined he'd experienced a psychotic break but was no longer a danger to himself or others. Gregory told doctors he'd been living in the apartment for 23 days after his lease ended, too afraid to leave because they were watching. He couldn't identify who they were. When asked why he stayed, he said leaving would make things worse. I tried to visit Gregory, but his sister Angela Nolan told me he'd moved to Colorado to live with family and didn't want to discuss what happened. She asked me not to contact him again, but she also said something strange. Whatever you think you saw in that apartment, please just let it go. Greg is safe now, and we want to keep him that way. The pizza orders to Unit 2408 stopped on November 3rd. The email account that placed them was deactivated. I filed incident reports with Marcos, with Riverside Property Management, with the police. All of them concluded I'd misunderstood the situation. Marcos fired me on November 10th for violation of privacy policies and unlawful entry, even though I'd been responding to a potentially dangerous situation. I obtained the police report through a FOIA request 6 months later. It stated officers found Unit 2408 completely vacant, except for my dropped pizza and scattered trash. No furniture, no personal belongings, no Gregory Nolan. It claimed I'd called 911 reporting a person in need, but when officers arrived, I changed my story and said the person had been taken by ambulance already. This was a complete fabrication. EMTs had transported Gregory while officers were still on scene. Yet the report made me look like an unreliable witness at best, intentionally deceptive at worst. I tracked down one of the responding EMTs, Rachel Park, 8 months later. She remembered the call, remembered Gregory's condition, remembered how violent he'd become when they tried to move him. She also remembered something else. The apartment had been fully furnished. She'd seen it. Christopher Dean had seen it. The 3 police officers had seen it. But the official reports said otherwise, and when she questioned this discrepancy with her supervisor, she was told to focus on patient care and leave investigations to detectives. Gregory Nolan's Social Security number hasn't been used since November 2017. No employment records, no tax returns, no address changes. It's like he vanished the moment he left that hospital. His sister Angela's phone number is now disconnected. Carlson Engineering has no information on where he went. The Colorado family members she mentioned don't exist in any databases I could access. Someone kept Gregory Nolan trapped in that apartment for 23 days after his lease ended. Someone was ordering him food twice a week. Someone furnished the apartment, then removed every trace of it before police could document it. And someone convinced multiple agencies to falsify their reports and make me look like an unreliable witness who'd imagined the entire scenario. I've never delivered pizza again. Can't do it. Every time I see an apartment building, I wonder how many units have people trapped inside them, how many orders are being placed by victims who can't leave, how many delivery drivers are walking into situations that will be erased before anyone can verify them. If you know Gregory Nolan, if you know what happened in Unit 2408 at Riverside Towers, if you were involved in that response and remember what was really there, please speak up. The silence is how they keep doing this. The padlock on the door had been cut. Fresh cuts, metal shaving still visible in the dirt, reflecting my headlights at 9:34 p.m. on December 12, 2018. The house at 1156 Oakmont Drive had been foreclosed for 7 months, windows boarded up, yard overgrown with dead grass. The bank's notice was still stapled to the doorframe, yet someone had ordered 3 large pizzas, 2 orders of wings, and a Caesar salad. Prepaid online. Delivery instructions. Leave on porch, knock twice, leave immediately. I'm Isaiah Morton, 23 years old, working delivery for Domino's to pay off student loans while trying to figure out my life. The order came through at 8:57 p.m. and I was the only driver available. My manager, Cheryl Fong, almost cancelled it when she saw the address because we'd had problems there before. Orders placed, nobody home, drivers losing time on fake deliveries. But the payment went through, so she sent me anyway. The house looked worse in person than on Google Street View. Windows not just boarded but covered with metal sheets. Front door painted with a red X indicating condemned status. The porch was collapsing on one end, wooden steps sagging. No car in the driveway. No lights anywhere. Just that cut padlock swinging slightly in the cold December wind. I grabbed the food and approached carefully, my footsteps echoing on the rotting wood. Knocked twice like the instructions said. Waited 30 seconds. Knocked again. Nothing. I set the bags down and was turning to leave when the door opened. Not a person opening it. It just opened, swinging inward on rusted hinges that shrieked loud enough to make me flinch. The interior was completely black. No lights, no movement. Just darkness and the smell of something rotten like food left to decay. "Hello?" My voice cracked. "Pizza delivery." A voice came from inside, distant, like someone was in a back room. "Bring it here. Can't come to the door." Every survival instinct I had screamed to drop the food and run. But I was young and stupid and convinced nothing truly bad could happen to a pizza delivery driver in suburban Indiana. I picked up the bags and stepped into that darkness. The smell hit me immediately, not just rotting food but human waste, body odor, something chemical and sharp. I pulled out my phone for light and saw the interior had been destroyed. Walls smashed open, exposing studs and wiring. Holes in the floor showing the crawl space below. And in the beam of my phone light, I saw a man sitting on a filthy mattress in what used to be the living room. He was maybe 50 years old, gaunt, wearing clothes that were stiff with dirt. His hair was long and matted, but his eyes were alert, focused on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Next to him was a portable camping stove, empty cans of food scattered around, and a pile of blankets that shifted slightly as I watched. "Set it here," he said, gesturing to a crate beside the mattress. I placed the bags down, my hands shaking. "That'll be—" I started, then remembered it was prepaid. "You're all set. Have a good night." I was backing toward the door when the blankets moved again, and I saw what was underneath. A girl, maybe 16 years old, pale and thin, with duct tape over her mouth and her wrists bound with zip ties. Her eyes locked onto mine, pleading, terrified. "You didn't see that," the man said. He stood up, and I saw the knife in his belt. Long blade, handle wrapped in duct tape. "You're just delivering food. That's all you saw." I ran, stumbled over the broken porch, nearly fell, sprinted to my car with my heart slamming against my ribs. I locked the doors and called 911 at 9:41 p.m. Operator Stephen Pierce answered, and I was talking so fast he had to ask me to slow down and repeat everything. I told him about the foreclosed house, the man, the girl tied up, the knife. He said units were being dispatched and to stay in my vehicle with the doors locked. I watched that house from my car, terrified the man would come out. But nothing moved. No lights, no sounds, just that open door like a mouth waiting to swallow whatever came near. Police arrived at 9:47 p.m. 3 cars, 6 officers. They surrounded the house with weapons drawn, using spotlights to illuminate the interior. Officer Amanda Cortez was the first through the door. She was inside for maybe 2 minutes before she emerged and waved the others in. I watched them search the house room by room, systematically clearing it. Detective William Nash approached my car at 10:14 p.m. His face was impossible to read. He asked me to describe exactly what I'd seen. I told him everything: the man, the girl, the knife, the zip ties, the camping equipment. He listened without interrupting, taking notes. "Son," he said when I finished, "there's nobody in that house. We've searched every room, every closet, the basement, the attic. It's empty except for trash and evidence of squatters." "That's impossible." I saw her. She was right there on the floor, tied up, tape over her mouth. We found the mattress, the camping stove, the empty cans, but no people, no zip ties, no duct tape except what's been used to patch holes in the walls. They made me come inside with them, made me point out exactly where I'd seen everything. The mattress was there, still damp from body heat. The crate I'd set the food on was there, but the bags were gone. The blankets were there, still in the pile where the girl had been hidden. But no girl, no man, no evidence anyone had been there in the seconds since I'd fled. "Where's the food?" I asked. "I left 3 pizza bags right here." Detective Nash shone his flashlight around the room. "I don't see any food bags." They searched for 45 minutes, checked the crawl space, the boarded-up windows, the backyard. Used a K9 unit. A German shepherd named Rex, handled by Officer Tyrone Butler. The dog indicated human scent in the living room area, confirmed someone had been there recently, but couldn't track where they'd gone. It was like they'd vanished into the air. I gave an official statement at the station at 11:22 p.m. Described the man in detail: height, weight, eye color, the condition of his clothes, the knife. Described the girl: age, hair color, the tape, the zip ties, the look in her eyes. They sent me home at 1:07 a.m. with instructions to call if I remembered anything else. The next day, I drove back to Oakmont Drive in daylight. The house looked even more decrepit than at night. I walked up to the porch and the padlock had been replaced. Not with a new lock, but with the same cut lock, somehow welded back together. The door was sealed shut, boards nailed across it that hadn't been there the night before. I called Detective Nash. He said the property owner, a bank called Midwest Foreclosure Holdings, had secured the property that morning after police notified them of the break-in. When I insisted the padlock couldn't have been repaired, he suggested I was remembering wrong, that stress can distort memories. I started investigating on my own. The foreclosed house had belonged to Daniel and Christine Novak. They'd lost it in June 2018 after Daniel lost his job and couldn't make payments. Public records showed they'd relocated to an apartment in Fort Wayne. I found Christine's Facebook page and sent her a message asking about the house, whether they'd had any problems before foreclosure, whether anyone had been squatting there. She responded 3 days later, "Stay away from that house. Whatever you think happened there, forget it. We tried to tell people and nobody listened. Just stay away." When I pressed her for details, she blocked me. I found Daniel's LinkedIn and sent him a message. He never responded, but his profile was deleted within 24 hours. The missing girl haunted me. I filed a missing persons report describing her, but police said without a name or any identifying information beyond my description, there was nothing to investigate. I checked missing persons databases for Indiana and surrounding states. Found dozens of girls who could have matched, but without being able to confirm. It was useless. Domino's fired me on December 18, 2018. Cheryl said I'd abandoned a delivery without authorization, failed to return with the company's insulated bags, and filed a false police report that wasted law enforcement resources. The bags I'd left in that house were never found, and I was charged $87.50 for them, deducted from my final paycheck. I drove past 1156 Oakmont Drive once more on Christmas Eve. The house was gone. Not demolished, gone. The lot was empty, just dead grass and the concrete foundation. I called the county assessor's office. They said the house had been demolished in September 2018 due to structural hazards. When I said that was impossible because I'd been inside it on December 12th, the clerk told me their records were accurate, and perhaps I was confused about the address. But I have the delivery receipt. The GPS log from my phone showing I was at that exact location, the 911 call recording, the police report. Even though it says they found nothing, the house existed, the girl existed, and someone made them both disappear so completely that even physical evidence was erased. I still work delivery, different company now, but I don't take orders to foreclosed properties anymore, no matter how much the tip is. And I check missing persons databases obsessively, looking for that girl's face, hoping she escaped, terrified she didn't. If you were that girl, if you somehow got away, please contact police. Tell them what happened at 1156 Oakmont Drive on December 12, 2018. Tell them I wasn't lying. Tell them you're real. The hotel had been closed for renovations since August 2020. Completely closed, all guests relocated, staff furloughed, construction crews working 6 days a week. Yet someone in room 712 kept ordering pizza every night at exactly 10:00 p.m. Same order. 1 large margarita, 1 bottle of sparkling water, tiramisu. Always prepaid through our online system with a credit card that processed without issue. I'm Fatima Hassan, and I delivered for Antonio's Pizzeria in downtown Chicago for 4 years. The Grand Meridian Hotel was one of our best customers before COVID shut them down. When orders started appearing from room 712 on November 4, 2020, I assumed they'd reopened and nobody had updated the website. I took the first delivery at 10:47 p.m., walked through the construction-blocked main entrance, and found the lobby gutted. Walls torn down to the studs, dust and debris everywhere, no lights except emergency exit signs. "Hello?" I called out. The echo made me realize how empty the building was. I called the customer number on the order. It rang 4 times. Then a man answered. His voice was rough, stressed. "Bring it to 712, elevator's working. Leave it outside the door." The elevator was the only thing that looked untouched. Clean, lit, functioning perfectly. I rode to the 7th floor, and when the doors opened, I stepped into another world. The hallway was finished, carpeted, lit with soft wall sconces. Like the renovations hadn't touched this floor. Room 712 was at the end, door slightly ajar. I knocked and called out. No response. I pushed the door open and saw a man sitting on the bed with his back to me, hunched over something I couldn't see. The room was immaculate, like housekeeping had just finished. Bed made, surfaces clean, TV playing news with the volume low. "Pizza delivery," I said. "I'll just leave it on the table." He didn't turn around. "Close the door. Lock it." "I can't do that, sir. Company policy." He finally turned, and I saw his face was covered in bruises. Fresh ones, purple and swollen. His lip was split. One eye was swollen, nearly shut. "Please," he said. "They're listening. If they hear the door open, they'll know you're here." I should have left immediately, should have called police from the hallway. But his fear was genuine, and I hesitated just long enough for him to start talking. "My name is Eric Thornton. I'm an auditor for Meridian Hotels. I found discrepancies in the renovation budget. $7 million unaccounted for. When I reported it, they locked me in here. November 1st. I don't know what day it is now." "It's November 4th, I said. "You've been here 3 days." "3 days, he repeated, like he couldn't believe it. "They bring food sometimes. Take my phone, watch the door. I tried to leave once, and they—" He gestured at his face. "Please, you have to call police. Tell them Eric Thornton is being held against his will at the Grand Meridian." I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. The call connected, and I heard the operator's greeting, but before I could speak, the room's lights went out. Complete darkness. The phone was ripped from my hand. Someone grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. I screamed and felt a hand cover my mouth. "You weren't supposed to come inside," a voice said close to my ear. Different voice. Not Eric. "You were supposed to leave the food and go." The lights came back on. I was on the floor, my arm twisted behind my back. The person holding me was a security guard in a black uniform with Meridian Security embroidered on the shoulder. His name tag said J. Crawford. He was maybe 40, muscular, no expression on his face. Eric was against the wall with another guard restraining him. This one was younger, Hispanic, name tag reading M. Santos. He had his hand over Eric's mouth. "Let her go," Eric was trying to say through Santos's hand. "She's not involved." Crawford pulled me to my feet and walked me to the door, my arm still twisted painfully behind my back. "You delivered a pizza. That's all you did. You never came inside. You never saw anyone. Understand?" "You can't keep him here," I said. "This is kidnapping. This is private corporate security handling an internal matter. You're trespassing in a closed facility. We could call the police on you." He pushed me into the hallway and released my arm. Santos brought Eric to the door, his hand still covering Eric's mouth, his eyes desperate. Crawford handed me a $100 bill. "For the pizza and your trouble. Forget this happened." He closed the door in my face. I heard it lock, heard the deadbolt slide. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, paralyzed with fear and indecision, before I ran to the elevator. I called 911 from the lobby at 11:03 p.m. Operator Michelle Tran answered, and I reported a kidnapping at the Grand Meridian Hotel, room 712. Gave her every detail, Eric's name, the security guards' names, the bruises, the 3 days, the corporate fraud. She confirmed officers were being dispatched. I waited in my car across the street, watching the hotel entrance. Police arrived at 11:11 p.m. 4 officers entered through the construction barriers. I saw their flashlights moving inside. They were in there for 28 minutes before emerging. Detective Robert Santiago approached my car at 11:42 p.m. "You reported a kidnapping in room 712? "Yes. Eric Thornton. He's been held there since November 1st. Ma'am, we searched the 7th floor. Room 712 is completely gutted. No furniture, no carpet, no fixtures. It's under active renovation. There's nobody there. That's impossible. I was just in there. The room was finished. Eric was on the bed. 2 security guards assaulted me. He asked me to come inside and show him exactly where I'd been. We rode the elevator to the 7th floor, and when the doors opened, my legs almost gave out. The hallway was unfinished, exposed concrete, hanging wires, construction materials stacked everywhere. Room 712 had no door, just an empty frame leading to a gutted space. No carpet, no bed, no TV, nothing. I was here, I kept saying. 20 minutes ago. This isn't what I saw. They found the pizza box. It was in the middle of the gutted room, sitting on the concrete floor, lid open, 4 slices missing. But no plates, no napkins, no evidence anyone had eaten it except that 4 slices were gone. I described the security guards in detail. Detective Santiago contacted Meridian Hotel's corporate security. They confirmed J. Crawford and M. Santos were both employees, but said neither was scheduled to work that night. And the Grand Meridian had no active security presence because the building was closed. When police tried to contact Crawford and Santos directly, both numbers went to voicemail that wasn't set up. I searched for Eric Thornton. Found him on LinkedIn, auditor for Meridian Hotels for 6 years, based in Chicago. His profile said he was on sabbatical starting November 2020. I sent him a message describing what happened. It showed as read but never received a response. I called Meridian Hotel's corporate office and asked to speak with Eric Thornton. The receptionist said he was on extended leave and couldn't be reached. The credit card that paid for the pizzas belonged to Meridian Hotel's corporate account. They placed the orders using an automated system that hadn't been deactivated when the hotel closed. But when I asked why someone kept ordering to a closed hotel, why the system processed orders every night, they had no explanation and cancelled the account immediately. Antonio's told me to stop talking about what happened. My manager, Paolo Ricci, said I was creating problems with an important client and risking the company's reputation. When I continued trying to investigate, he fired me on November 9, 2020, citing insubordination and abandonment of delivery duties. I filed reports with Chicago PD, with the Illinois Labor Board, with the FBI. All of them found no evidence of wrongdoing. The police report classified it as a case of mistaken perception, possibly influenced by stress or fatigue. Eric Thornton never responded to any of my contact attempts. The security guards were never questioned because Meridian Hotels said they'd investigated internally and found no policy violations. The Grand Meridian reopened in March 2021. I went to the hotel and asked to see room 72. The clerk said there was no room 72. The 7th floor only had room 701 through 710 after renovations. The floor plan had been changed. Where room 72 had been was now a storage closet for housekeeping supplies. Eric Thornton's LinkedIn profile was deleted in December 2020. His social media accounts went dark. The last public record I could find was a change of address form filed in January 2021, relocating to an address in Phoenix that turned out to be a UPS store mailbox. I hired a private investigator in April 2021, a woman named Laura Fitzpatrick who specialized in corporate fraud cases. She found nothing. No employment records after November 2020. No tax returns. No utility bills. Eric Thornton effectively ceased to exist. I drive past the Grand Meridian sometimes, looking up at the 7th floor, trying to figure out which windows used to be room 712. The hotel looks normal, successful, full of guests. Nobody there has any idea that somewhere in that building, a man was held prisoner, beaten, and then erased so completely that even the room he was in no longer exists. If you worked for Meridian Hotel's corporate security in November 2020, If you know what happened to Eric Thornton, if you were involved in whatever fraud he discovered, please come forward. $7 million doesn't disappear by accident, and neither do auditors who find it. The house was decorated for a child's birthday party. Balloons tied to the mailbox, streamers hanging from the porch, a banner reading, "Happy 7th Birthday, Sarah," stretched across the front door. But the party was 3 weeks ago. The decorations were faded, torn, covered in dirt and leaves. And the order that came through our system on February 23, 2019, at 8:17 p.m. asked for 12 large pizzas, enough for 50 people. I'm Marcus Whitfield, and I worked for Pizza Palace in suburban Minnesota for 8 months. The delivery to 843 Willow Creek Lane was my 4th of the night, and the size of the order made me think it was a genuine party. The payment went through, $187,000, including delivery fee and a generous tip. Notes said to ring the doorbell twice and wait. When I pulled up at 9:02 p.m., the house was dark except for one window upstairs. The decorations confused me immediately. They looked weeks old, and it was the middle of winter. Nothing stays pristine for that long in February, Minnesota. No cars in the driveway. No sounds of a party, just that single lit window and those damaged decorations swaying in the freezing wind. I loaded the 12 pizzas onto a dolly and wheeled them to the front door. Rang the doorbell twice, like instructed. The sound echoed inside, but nobody came. I waited for 2 minutes, then rang again. This time I heard footsteps, slow and heavy, descending stairs inside the house. The door opened 6 inches, chain lock still engaged. A man peered out, maybe 50 years old, unshaven, eyes red like he'd been crying. "You're late," he said. "Sorry, sir. Traffic was heavy. I have your 12 pizzas. Put them inside, quick." He closed the door to remove the chain, then opened it fully. The interior was dark except for light coming from upstairs. I could smell something wrong. Not food, not normal house smells, but something chemical, and underneath it, something organic and decaying. "Just stack them in the kitchen," he said, pointing down a dark hallway. I wheeled the dolly inside, and he immediately closed and locked the door behind me. The sound of the deadbolt sliding made every muscle in my body tense. "Sir, I need to get back to my car." "Kitchen's this way. Come on." He walked ahead of me, and I followed because I didn't know what else to do. The hallway walls were covered with photographs. Birthday parties, family pictures, a little girl with blonde hair in various stages of growing up. Sarah, I assumed. But the photos were damaged, torn, burned edges, some with the faces scratched out. The kitchen was worse, dirty dishes piled in the sink, take-out containers covering every surface, trash bags stacked against the wall, and at the table were place settings for 12 people. Paper plates, plastic forks, cups, napkins, like he was expecting guests. "Set them here," he said, gesturing to the table. "One at each spot." I placed the pizzas according to his instructions, my hands shaking. "Sir, that's $187. The order was prepaid, so you're all set." "The guests will be here soon," he said, not looking at me. He was arranging the pizzas precisely, adjusting them so they were perfectly centered on each plate. Sarah's friends. They said they'd come. They promised. "Sir, I really need to get going." "You'll stay?" "You have to witness it. Everyone needs to see that I kept my promise." That's when I heard it. A small voice from upstairs, weak and hoarse. "Daddy, is the pizza here?" The man's face transformed. Suddenly he was smiling, tears running down his cheeks. "Yes, sweetheart, the pizza's here. Your friends can come now." "There's no one here, Daddy. There's never anyone here." His smile vanished. He looked at me with such fury that I backed against the wall. "She's wrong. They're coming. They RSVP'd. All 12 of them. They're just late." I pulled out my phone to call for help, and he grabbed my wrist, squeezing until I dropped it. No, you stay until they arrive. Sarah deserves a party. She deserves friends. The voice from upstairs came again, weaker now. Daddy, I'm cold. It hurts. I twisted free and ran for the door. He chased me, shouting that I was ruining everything, that Sarah would never forgive me, that I had to stay for the party. I got the deadbolt open, yanked the door, and ran to my car with him following me into the yard, screaming about promises and parties and how everyone always abandons them. I locked my doors and called 911 at 9:14 p.m. Operator Jennifer Larson answered, and I reported a man holding someone upstairs, possibly a child in distress, erratic behavior, possible hostage situation. I gave the address and stayed on the line until police arrived at 9:19 p.m. 4 officers responded. They approached the house with weapons drawn. The man had gone back inside and locked the door. They knocked, identified themselves, demanded he open the door. He shouted through the door that it was a private party and they weren't invited. Officers forced entry at 9:24 p.m. I watched from my car as they entered, flashlights sweeping the interior. They were inside for 8 minutes before Officer Danielle Kruger emerged and immediately called for an ambulance. Then she approached my car. "Did you go upstairs?" she asked. "No. I heard a voice, a girl, but I only went to the kitchen." The girl upstairs is Sarah Whitfield. She's 7 years old. Severe pneumonia, dehydration, possibly septic. She's been in bed for at least 2 weeks based on the condition of the room. Her father, Brian Whitfield, has been caring for her at home instead of getting medical treatment. Is she going to be okay? Officer Kruger's expression told me everything. Paramedics are doing what they can. Sarah Whitfield died at County Medical Center at 11:47 p.m. on February 23, 2019. The doctors said she'd had bacterial pneumonia that had progressed to sepsis. With proper medical care, she would have survived easily. But Brian Whitfield had kept her home, giving her over-the-counter medications, convinced that her birthday party would make her feel better, that she just needed to celebrate with friends. The investigation revealed Brian's wife, Catherine Whitfield, had died in a car accident on December 9, 2018. Brian had spiraled into depression and denial. He'd planned an elaborate birthday party for Sarah on February 2, 2019, inviting her entire second-grade class. Nobody came. The school had sent notes to parents warning them that Brian was behaving erratically at pickup, and they should avoid playdates at the Whitfield residence. When Sarah got sick around February 10th, Brian convinced himself another party would cheer her up. He kept planning it, kept promising her the friends would come, kept ordering party supplies online. The school called Child Protective Services on February 14th when Sarah hadn't attended classes for a week. CPS scheduled a home visit for February 25th. 2 days too late. Brian was charged with criminally negligent homicide. His defense attorney, Richard Molina, argued he was mentally incompetent due to grief and depression. The court ordered psychiatric evaluation. Dr. Patricia Wong determined Brian had experienced a psychotic break after his wife's death and genuinely believed he was helping Sarah by keeping her home and planning parties instead of seeking medical care. He was found not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect on September 18, 2019. Committed to Minnesota State Psychiatric Hospital for treatment. I attended the hearing, hoping for some kind of justice for Sarah, but watched him be led away to a facility instead of a prison. I quit Pizza Palace the next week. Couldn't do deliveries anymore. Every house with decorations made me think of those faded balloons and torn streamers. Every child's voice made me hear Sarah asking if the pizza was there, if her friends had come. The house at 843 Willow Creek Lane was sold in June 2019. The new owners tore down all the decorations, repainted everything, tried to erase what had happened. But I drive past it sometimes, and I still see those 12 place settings at the table, pizza at each spot, waiting for guests who would never arrive while a little girl died upstairs asking if anyone cared enough to celebrate with her. Child Protective Services did an internal review of Sarah's case, found that reports about Brian's behavior had been filed but not prioritized due to caseload volume. The social worker assigned to the case, Heather Daniels, had 53 active cases and couldn't schedule home visits within the recommended timeframes. The system was broken, and Sarah fell through the cracks. If you're a parent struggling with grief and mental health, if you're watching your child get sicker and convincing yourself it's not serious, please seek help. Sarah Whitfield would have turned 8 on February 2nd, 2020. She never got to see 8 because one tragic accident became 2 when the system designed to protect her failed. The delivery instructions said to enter through the south gate, follow the dirt road to the trailer marked Site Office, and leave the food on the steps. The construction site at 4400 Industrial Parkway had been abandoned for 6 months, chain-link fences topped with no trespassing signs, the partially completed warehouse standing like a skeleton against the night sky. Yet someone ordered 5 pizzas, 4 orders of breadsticks, and 2 large sodas at 10:33 p.m. on May 17, 2021. I'm Alana Kunuk, 28 years old, Inuit heritage, working delivery in Anchorage to support my grandmother. The order came through our system prepaid. Customer name listed as Night Crew Foreman. I called the number to confirm. It rang twice before someone answered with heavy machinery noise in the background. Male voice, gruff, said, "Yeah, bring it to the site office like the instructions say," and hung up before I could ask questions. The south gate was open when I arrived at 11:04 p.m. Chain cut, hanging loose. Fresh tire tracks in the mud leading into the site. I followed them slowly, my headlights illuminating the unfinished warehouse, piles of building materials, heavy equipment sitting motionless. And at the far end, a construction trailer with lights on inside exactly as described. I parked and grabbed the food, walked to the trailer and knocked on the metal door. It swung open immediately, not because someone opened it, but because it wasn't latched. Inside I could see a space heater running, a folding table with papers scattered across it, a portable radio playing static, but no people. "Hello? Food delivery." No response. I stepped inside, and the door slammed shut behind me. I spun around and saw it had been rigged with a wire that pulled it closed when weight crossed the threshold. My weight, and now I heard the lock engage automatically. I tried the handle, locked solid. I pounded on the door, shouting for help. Then I noticed the papers on the table, building permits for the warehouse, dated October 2020. Inspectors' reports documenting code violations, faulty electrical, inadequate foundation support, substandard materials, and a letter from the city dated November the 12th, 2020, ordering construction halted immediately due to safety concerns. Underneath those documents was a folder marked Incident Report, November 9th, 2020. I opened it and found police reports, medical examiner notes, photographs. 3 construction workers had been killed when a section of the warehouse collapsed during a concrete pour. Carlos Mendez, age 34, James Okoye, age 41, and David Tanaka, age 27. The report concluded the deaths were accidental, caused by structural failure due to the documented violations. But there was another document, handwritten notes on yellow legal paper. Someone had been investigating, documenting evidence that the collapse wasn't accidental. The notes detailed how the site foreman, a man named Russell Tate, had been warned multiple times about the violations but continued work anyway to meet deadlines. How he'd ordered workers to proceed with the concrete pour despite visible cracks in the support structures. How he'd falsified inspection reports and bribed a city inspector named Donald Marsh to approve substandard work. The notes were signed Kenneth Reeves, Safety Inspector, with a date of April 30th, 2021. 17 days ago. And at the bottom was a single line. Tate knows I have the evidence. Meeting him tonight to negotiate terms. If something happens to me, this folder proves everything. I heard an engine outside, heavy, rumbling, moving closer. I looked through the trailer's small window and saw a bulldozer approaching, its blade raised, headlights cutting through the darkness. Someone was driving it, but I couldn't see their face from this angle. I called 911 at 11:11 p.m. Operator Travis Coleman answered, and I told him I was locked in a construction trailer at 4400 Industrial Parkway with a bulldozer approaching. He started asking questions. Who locked me in? Why was I there? Was I trespassing? And I was shouting that there wasn't time when the bulldozer's blade hit the trailer. The impact threw me across the space. I hit the opposite wall hard enough to see stars. The trailer's metal structure groaned and buckled. I crawled to the door, tried the handle again, but it was still locked. The bulldozer backed up, repositioning, and I knew the next hit would collapse the entire structure on top of me. I grabbed the space heater and smashed it through the window. The glass shattered, and I climbed through as the bulldozer charged again. I fell into the mud outside just as the blade hit, and the trailer crumpled like a tin can. The metal screamed, support beams snapped, and the whole thing folded in on itself. I ran toward my car, but the bulldozer pivoted and came after me. I could see the driver now, male wearing a hard hat and reflective vest, face hidden behind the glare of the headlights. He was trying to run me down, the massive machine surprisingly fast as it churned through the mud. I dove behind a pile of steel beams and the bulldozer's blade hit them with a deafening crash. The impact sent beams flying, one missing my head by inches. I scrambled deeper into the construction site, hiding behind equipment, while the bulldozer hunted me like something from a nightmare. Police sirens cut through the night. The bulldozer stopped, engine idling. I heard the driver jump down and run. I stayed hidden until I saw flashlight beams and heard officers calling out. Then I emerged from behind a cement mixer covered in mud, bleeding from cuts where the glass had sliced my arms. Officer Thomas Kavanagh responded first, followed by Officer Lisa Morton and Officer Justin Park. I told them everything. The locked trailer, the documents, the bulldozer attack. They found the destroyed trailer, the documents scattered in the wreckage, and the bulldozer still running with its keys in the ignition. But the driver was gone. Detective Angela Santos took my statement at 12:47 a.m. I described the attack, the documents I'd found, Kenneth Reeves's notes about the cover-up. She collected everything from the demolished trailer, reports, photos, the handwritten evidence against Russell Tate and Donald Marsh. This was the break they needed to prove the November 9th deaths weren't accidental. Except it wasn't. The next day, Detective Santos called me. The documents I'd found were forgeries. High-quality forgeries designed to look like authentic police reports and inspection records, but none of them matched official files. The real incident reports from November 9th showed the deaths were thoroughly investigated and conclusively determined to be accidental. Russell Tate and Donald Marsh were cleared of any wrongdoing. What about Kenneth Reeves? I asked. The safety inspector whose notes I found? There's no Kenneth Reeves registered as a safety inspector in Alaska. The name doesn't appear in any licensing database. The signature on those notes doesn't match any authorized inspector we have on file. Someone tried to kill me with a bulldozer. That's not fake. We're investigating the assault, but the documents you found appear to be part of an elaborate hoax. We don't know who created them or why they were left in that trailer, but they're not evidence of anything except someone's detailed fabrication. The bulldozer's ownership was traced to the construction company that had abandoned the site. The keys should have been secured in their equipment yard, but the gate had been broken into 3 weeks earlier and multiple keys stolen. No way to determine who'd taken them. I hired an attorney, Jennifer Cole, to pursue civil action against whoever had lured me to that site. She investigated the pizza order. The payment came from a prepaid debit card purchased with cash at a convenience store. The phone number that placed the order was a burner phone activated that day and destroyed immediately after. No security footage, no witnesses, no way to trace who was responsible. The company that owned the construction site, Frontier Development LLC, denied any knowledge of the incident. Their attorney, Robert Nolan, claimed they'd secured the site properly and anyone entering was trespassing. When I tried to sue them for negligence in leaving equipment accessible, the case was dismissed on August 3, 2021. Judge Harold Fisher ruled I'd entered the property illegally in response to what was clearly a fraudulent order, and my injuries were the result of my own poor judgment. I researched the November 9, 2020 deaths obsessively, found obituaries for Carlos Mendez, James Okoye, and David Tanaka, contacted their families. Carlos's widow, Maria Mendez, told me her husband had complained about safety violations for weeks before he died. He'd told her the foreman was cutting corners and ignoring inspectors. She tried to tell police this during the investigation, but they said emotional statements from grieving family members weren't reliable evidence. James Okoye's brother, Emmanuel Okoye, said similar things. James had been documenting violations with photos on his phone, planning to report them to OSHA. That phone was never recovered from the collapse site. Police said it was destroyed in the debris, but Emmanuel believed it was taken before they could retrieve it. I tried to find Russell Tate. He'd left Alaska in December 2020, just weeks after the incident. His current location was unknown, his contractor's license surrendered, no forwarding address on file. Donald Marsh, the inspector allegedly bribed, was still working for the city. When I tried to contact him, his attorney sent me a cease and desist letter threatening legal action if I continued making defamatory statements. Pizza deliveries to abandoned construction sites continued in Anchorage. I filed reports with every delivery company, warning them about the address at 4400 Industrial Parkway. Most updated their systems to block it, but 2 other drivers reported similar experiences in June and July 2021, orders to closed sites, locked structures, narrow escapes. Both drivers were dismissed from their jobs for unsafe behavior when they tried to report what happened. If you worked construction at 4400 Industrial Parkway in 2020, if you witnessed the violations that led to 3 men dying, if you know where Russell Tate is now, please contact authorities. Those men died because profits mattered more than safety, and whoever tried to kill me was willing to commit murder to keep that truth buried. The address was 2741 Maple Ridge Road, but the house I stopped at was 2747. I didn't realize my mistake until I'd already knocked, until the door had opened, until I'd seen inside. That 6-digit error on April 9, 2022, at 9:58 p.m. changed everything I thought I knew about my quiet suburban neighborhood in Oregon. I'm Christina Berg, 31 years old, Swedish-American, delivering for Papa John's to supplement my teaching income. I'd driven Maple Ridge Road hundreds of times. It was one of our primary delivery zones, houses spaced evenly, numbers clearly marked. But that night it was raining hard enough that visibility was terrible, and I was rushing through deliveries to get home. The order was for 2 large pizzas and an order of wings. Customer name, Jennifer Park. Phone number went to voicemail when I called to confirm. The porch light was on at 2747, and I assumed that was my destination. Grabbed the food, ran through the rain, knocked on the door. A woman answered immediately. Asian, maybe mid-30s, wearing a bathrobe, hair wet like she'd just showered. But her eyes were wrong, red, swollen, terrified. And behind her I could see into the house, knocked over furniture, smashed picture frames, blood on the wall. "I didn't order pizza," she said. Her voice was shaking. "I'm sorry, must be the wrong house. I'm looking for 2741. "That's next door." She started to close the door, and I saw the bruises on her throat. Fresh bruises, finger-shaped, like someone had tried to strangle her. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" "I'm fine. Wrong house. Go." She was trying to close the door, but her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't grip the handle properly. I heard a male voice from inside. "Who's at the door?" Her face went absolutely white. "Nobody. Wrong address." "Then close the fucking door." I should have left, should have gone to 27421, delivered the actual pizza, gone home. But the terror in her eyes made me pull out my phone. "I'm calling 911. The door was ripped open all the way. A man stood there, maybe 40 years old, muscular, wearing jeans and no shirt. His knuckles were bloody. "Who are you?" "Pizza delivery. I have the wrong house. I'm leaving." He grabbed my wrist before I could step back. "You're not calling anyone. Come inside, now." I tried to pull free, but his grip was iron. He dragged me into the house and slammed the door. The woman, Jennifer, I learned later, was backing away down the hallway, hands held up in a placating gesture. "David, let her go. She's not involved." "She was about to call the cops. That makes her involved." He twisted my arm until I dropped my phone, then kicked it across the room. I'm not a large person, 5'4", maybe 120 pounds. David was probably 6'2" and easily double my weight. When he shoved me against the wall, I couldn't fight back. When he told me to sit on the couch and not move, I sat. Jennifer stood in the doorway to the kitchen, and now I could see the full extent of the damage. Her lip was split. Her cheek was swelling. Blood soaked through her bathrobe on the left side, and she was looking at me with an expression that said she'd tried to protect me and failed. "This is between me and my wife," David said. "You walked into a domestic situation. Not your business." "Domestic violence is everyone's business," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "You need to let me leave." He laughed. Actually laughed. "You came into my house. You're trespassing. Maybe I hold you here until you learn to mind your own business." Jennifer spoke quietly. "David, please, just let her go. She won't say anything." "How do we know that? How do I know she won't run straight to the cops?" "Because I'll tell them it was a misunderstanding. I'll say I fell. I'll say whatever you want." The desperation in her voice made me understand this wasn't the first time. This was a practiced negotiation. She'd been here before, bargaining for her safety with promises to lie. David considered this, then nodded. "Fine. But you—" He pointed at me. "You don't see anything worth reporting. My wife is clumsy. She fell. You came to the wrong house and left. That's the only story." "Okay," I lied. "That's the only story." He picked up my phone and scrolled through it, checking my recent calls. Satisfied I hadn't called police yet, he handed it back. "Get out. Deliver your pizza. Forget this happened." I stood up slowly, grabbed the pizza bag I'd dropped, and walked to the door. Jennifer was still in the kitchen doorway, and as I passed her, she mouthed 2 words. "Help me." I nodded slightly, praying David didn't see. Then I was outside in the rain, the door closing behind me, my legs shaking so badly I could barely walk to my car. I sat in the driver's seat for maybe 30 seconds before I called 911. Operator Brandon Taylor answered at 10:07 p.m. I reported a domestic violence situation at 2747 Maple Ridge Road, victim being held against her will. Visible injuries, perpetrator approximately 6'2", white male, first name David. Operator Taylor confirmed units were dispatched and told me to leave the area immediately for my safety. I drove to 2741, delivered the actual pizza to a confused elderly couple, then parked 3 houses down from 2747 to wait for police. They arrived at 10:14 p.m. Officers Rachel Santos and Victor Petrov knocked on the door. David answered, shirt on now, completely calm. I watched from my car as they talked, David gesturing casually, laughing at something Officer Santos said. After maybe 5 minutes, Jennifer appeared at the door. She'd changed clothes, cleaned the blood off her face. She smiled at the officers and shook her head. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but her body language said, "Everything's fine." The officers returned to their car. I jumped out and ran over before they could drive away. "She's lying. I saw the blood, the bruises, the destroyed house. He's forcing her to cover for him." Officer Petrov took my statement. I described everything I'd seen, everything David had said, Jennifer's mouthed plea for help. He and Officer Santos exchanged looks. "Ma'am, Mrs. Park says you're mistaken. She had a friend over earlier who accidentally knocked over some furniture while moving boxes. She says she wasn't injured and her husband wasn't home until 20 minutes ago. She has text messages showing he was at his brother's house until 9:45. "That's a lie. I saw him. I saw the bruises on her throat." Mrs. Park showed us her throat. "There's some redness," she says, "is from an allergic reaction to a new soap. No bruises consistent with strangulation." "What about the blood on the wall?" She said her friend cut her hand on broken glass from the knocked-over picture frames. There was a bandage in the trash confirming someone had minor bleeding. They had an answer for everything. A complete narrative that explained away every detail I'd witnessed, and Jennifer had confirmed it all, standing next to David with his hand resting on her shoulder, looking like a perfect suburban couple dealing with an overreactive pizza delivery driver. I insisted they take photos of her injuries, document everything, file a report. Officer Santos agreed and went back to the house. When she returned, she showed me photos on her phone. Jennifer's face with minimal swelling, her throat with slight redness but no obvious bruising, her arms and visible skin showing no defensive wounds. Either the injuries had faded impossibly fast, or David had coached her on makeup application and lighting angles to hide them. The official report, which I obtained later through public records request, stated officers responded to a third-party domestic violence report at 2747 Maple Ridge Road. Both parties denied any violence. No visible injuries warranting further investigation. Reporting party appeared to have misinterpreted an innocent situation. No arrests made. I contacted domestic violence advocates, spoke with Counselor Sofia Martinez at the Women's Resource Center. She explained what I'd witnessed. A victim so controlled by her abuser that she'd protect him even with help standing right there. The strangulation attempts I'd seen were one of the strongest predictors of eventual homicide in domestic violence cases. Jennifer Park was in extreme danger, but without her cooperation, there was nothing authorities could do. I filed my own report documenting everything I'd seen. I drove past 2747 regularly, watching for signs of trouble. I left my phone number with neighbors, asking them to call if they heard anything concerning. On June 3, 2022, 55 days after I delivered pizza to the wrong house, Jennifer Park was admitted to Mercy Hospital with life-threatening injuries. Fractured skull, broken ribs, ruptured spleen. David had beaten her with a baseball bat during an argument. This time, she couldn't hide it. This time, the injuries were too severe for explanations about falling or allergic reactions. David was arrested and charged with attempted murder. He made bail on June 5th. On June 8th, Jennifer was released from the hospital to a secure domestic violence shelter. On June 12th, David violated the restraining order and showed up at the shelter. Security called police, and he was arrested again. His trial began on October 17, 2022. I testified about what I'd witnessed on April 9th. The defense attorney, Paul Whitmore, tried to discredit me, suggesting I'd misinterpreted an innocent situation and had a pattern of making false reports. But Jennifer testified too. She described years of abuse, the April 9th strangulation attempt, the threats David had made about what would happen if she ever told anyone. David Hoffman was convicted of attempted murder, aggravated assault, and domestic violence on November 4, 2022. Sentenced to 18 years in prison. Jennifer divorced him while he awaited sentencing. She moved to a different state, changed her name, started rebuilding the life he'd tried to destroy. But here's what haunts me. I delivered pizzas on Maple Ridge Road for 3 years before that night. How many times had I driven past 2747 while Jennifer was being beaten inside? How many other houses on my delivery routes have victims trapped inside unable to ask for help while I walk past oblivious with their dinner orders? The 6-digit mistake that sent me to the wrong house saved Jennifer's life. If I'd gone directly to 2741, if I hadn't knocked on that door at exactly the moment when she was desperate enough to mouth help me, she'd probably be dead now. David's escalation pattern pointed toward eventual murder. Multiple experts testified to that at his trial. If you're delivering anything to anyone's home, pay attention to what you see. Broken furniture, blood, bruises, fear in someone's eyes. These aren't things to ignore. And if you're in a situation like Jennifer was, know that the person delivering pizza or mail or packages might be the one person who sees the truth and refuses to look away. The restaurant was closing in 10 minutes when the order came through our system on August 31st, 2023. At 11:51 p.m., 1 large veggie pizza, 1 order of garlic knots. Delivery to 9156 Ashford Heights Drive. Payment processed immediately. Tip included. Delivery notes saying, "Final order. Thank you for everything." I'm Natasha Sokolov, Russian immigrant, working 3 jobs including pizza delivery to bring my parents to America. The order seemed normal except for the strange notes and the timing. Most delivery requests came hours earlier, not minutes before closing. My manager, Tony Russo, almost rejected it, but the system had accepted payment and the address was only 12 minutes away. He told me to take it and we'd close after I returned. I'd never delivered to Ashford Heights Drive before. It was in the expensive part of town. Houses with long driveways and privacy gates, the kind of neighborhood where people usually picked up their own food or used premium delivery services. The GPS led me up a winding road into hills overlooking the city, houses getting farther apart, darkness getting deeper between the streetlights. 9156 was at the end of a cul-de-sac, a large 2-story house with all the lights on. Every window blazed, making it look like a beacon against the night. The front door was standing open, not just unlocked, fully open, lights spilling onto the porch and lawn. I parked in the driveway and grabbed the food, walked to the door and called out, "Pizza delivery." My voice echoed in the entrance hall. No response. I stepped inside, concerned someone might be hurt or need help. The house was immaculate. Expensive furniture, art on the walls, fresh flowers in vases. But completely silent. No TV sounds, no voices, no movement. Just the hum of the air conditioning and my footsteps on hardwood floors. "Hello, your pizza is here." I walked through the entrance into a large living room. And that's where I found them. A man and woman sitting on the couch, facing the television which was off. They weren't moving. Just sitting there, hands in their laps, eyes open but unseeing. I approached slowly, my pulse hammering. "Sir? Ma'am? Are you okay?" Neither responded. I touched the woman's shoulder, and she was cold. Completely cold. Her skin had the waxy texture of death. I jerked my hand back and saw the pill bottles on the coffee table. Empty bottles, at least 8 of them, labels showing prescriptions for sleeping pills and pain medication. Suicide. Double suicide. I was standing in a house with 2 dead people who'd ordered pizza as their final act. I called 911 at 12:04 a.m. Operator Hannah Yates answered, and I could barely speak. My English falls apart under stress, and I was stammering in Russian and English mixed together. She stayed calm, asked me to repeat slowly. I told her about the bodies, the pills, the open door. She confirmed emergency services were coming and told me to exit the house immediately and wait outside. I ran out to my car and sat there shaking, watching that open door with all its light, waiting for sirens. They arrived at 12:11 a.m. Paramedics first, then police, then more vehicles with flashing lights turning the quiet street into chaos. Detective Christina Morales took my statement at 12:47 a.m. I explained about the late-night order, the strange delivery notes, finding the bodies. She asked if I'd touched anything besides the woman's shoulder. I said no. She asked if the door had been open when I arrived. I confirmed it had been. The bodies were identified as Raymond and Patricia Chen, ages 68 and 65, longtime residents of the home. The medical examiner, Dr. Michael Torres, determined they died approximately 2 hours before I arrived. Cause of death: overdose of prescription medications. It was clearly intentional. The staged setting, the empty bottles, the note left on the table. The note was addressed to their daughter, Emily Chen. It explained they'd both been diagnosed with terminal illnesses in July. Raymond with pancreatic cancer, Patricia with aggressive dementia. Rather than face long deteriorating deaths, they'd chosen to end their lives together while they were still themselves. They'd made arrangements for their estates, said goodbye in letters to family members, and ordered one final meal before taking the pills. Why they'd ordered delivery instead of cooking or eating food already in the house, I don't know. Maybe it was symbolic, a normal act in an abnormal situation. Maybe they wanted someone to find them relatively quickly, rather than lying undiscovered for days. Detective Morales said the daughter lived in Seattle and wouldn't have checked on them until the weekend. I gave my statement, provided my contact information, and was told I could leave at 1:33 a.m. I drove back to the restaurant, where Tony was still waiting, worried about me. I told him what happened, and he sent me home for the night even though I hadn't cleaned my delivery bag. The Chen's deaths were ruled suicide by the medical examiner on September 2nd, 2023. Their daughter Emily released a statement thanking everyone for their compassion during a difficult time. She asked for privacy as the family processed their grief. But I couldn't process what I'd experienced. I kept thinking about them ordering that pizza, knowing they'd never eat it, knowing a stranger would find them dead, making me the unwilling witness to their final choice. Papa John's offered me counseling through their employee assistance program. I attended 3 sessions with therapist Dr. Laura Kim, who specialized in trauma. She helped me understand that I'd done nothing wrong, that finding them wasn't my fault, that Raymond and Patricia had made their choice independent of any delivery driver. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been used. They'd ordered pizza not because they wanted it, but because they needed someone to discover them, and I was the random person who happened to be working that night. The final order, "Thank you for everything" note in the delivery instructions hadn't been for the restaurant. It had been their farewell to normal life. I returned to work on September 6th. Tony had reassigned me to different routes, avoiding Ashford Heights Drive entirely. But on September 14th, another order came through from 9156 Ashford Heights Drive. Same address. Same time, 11:53 p.m. One large veggie pizza, garlic knots, delivery notes. Final order, "Thank you for everything." I stared at the screen, my hands starting to shake. "Tony, that's impossible. The Chens are dead." He checked the order. "System shows the house is vacant, but payment processed. Credit card is..." He went pale. "It's Raymond Chen's credit card." We called police. They sent officers to check the house at 12:17 a.m. The property was empty, secured, no signs of entry. The daughter, Emily, had been there earlier, cleaning out belongings, but had left hours ago. Nobody was inside, yet the payment had processed. The order was real in our system, and when police checked with the credit card company, they confirmed a charge of $34.75 had been made to Papa John's at 11:53 p.m. from Raymond Chen's account, which should have been closed after his death. This happened 3 more times: September 21st, September 28th, October 5th. Always the same order, same time, same delivery notes, same credit card that shouldn't work. Each time police checked the house and found it empty. Each time the payment was real, money actually transferred to the restaurant's account. Tony finally blocked the address in our system on October 7th. He couldn't handle the stress of police investigations every week, couldn't explain to corporate why we kept taking orders from dead people. The house at 9156 Ashford Heights Drive was flagged as "Do Not Deliver" across all pizza chains in the area. But the orders didn't stop. They shifted to other restaurants, other delivery services. I heard from drivers at Pizza Hut, Domino's, local places. The same story: late-night order from the Chen house, payment processing from Raymond's card, delivery notes about final orders. Some drivers would show up and find the house empty. Others would find the door open and lights on like I had. None found bodies, but all felt the overwhelming wrongness of the place. Emily Chen sold the house in December 2023. The new owners, a young couple named Taylor and Morgan Reed, moved in on January 15, 2024. I don't know if anyone told them about the suicides or the impossible orders. The real estate disclosure laws in our state only require reporting deaths if they occurred within 3 years and in certain circumstances. I still deliver pizzas, but I check every address against my mental list of places I won't go. Houses where I found bodies. Houses where people tried to hurt me. Houses where something happened that I still don't understand. The list grows longer than I want to admit. Raymond and Patricia Chen chose how and when to die. I respect that choice, even though I wish they hadn't made me part of it. What I don't understand is why their final order keeps repeating, why Raymond's card keeps processing charges months after his death, why that house at 9156 Ashford Heights Drive feels like it's still waiting for something. If you knew Raymond and Patricia Chen, if you understand why they structured their death to involve a delivery driver, if you know anything about the continuing orders from that address, please come forward. Not for legal reasons. They broke no laws, but because I need to understand why I was chosen for that role and whether the orders will ever truly stop.